Mesa 9 was still coughing heat when I found her. The rescue balloons had popped like old lungs. The nose cone was split, foam insulation drifting across the salt flats in slow, weird spirals. The hull kept hissing, alive and angry, like it had opinions about dying out here. I shouldn't have gone near it. The corporate band on my wrist pulsed red. Unauthorized salvage, fines apply, while Knox's patrols buzzed lazy circles somewhere beyond the ridge. The district feed kept repeating curfew extensions and ration alerts in a bright, synthetic voice that never got tired. But I'd seen the chute blossom at dawn, off course and burning. This basin ate pilots for breakfast. You either ran toward screams, or you didn't. I was tired of not running. I popped the canopy with a pry bar and a prayer. The seal broke with a damp kiss of coolant. Smoke rolled out. I reached in, blind and stupid. Her hand closed on my wrist. Not a weak grip, not a panic grab. It felt calibrated. Every tendon in her fingers mapped mine. Pressure perfect. A check and a claim in one motion. I looked down through the haze and found her eyes, gold like coins held up to a lamp, stubborn even while her lashes trembled. "It's okay," I heard myself say, steady in a way I hadn't felt for years. "I've got you." The harness fought me. The cockpit wanted to keep her. Everything on Mesa 9 was proprietary, bolts that needed company wrenches, cords that unlatch for authorized hands only. I swore at a dead lawyer and cut her free. She kept that wrist, though, even when I lifted her, even when I hauled us both across the warm skin of the ship and slid down its side, my boots leaving rubber grief. The closest shade was my garage, aluminum ribs, solar shingles like a cheap smile. Half the tools inside were older than me, the other half printed illegally after midnight. A drone broom sulked in the corner, refusing to sweep unless I renewed its subscription. I shoved the rolling door, and the day shrank. Fan whisper, oil ghosts, the sweet medicinal rot of blue algae battery packs that needed a flush 2 months ago. I laid her on the workbench, old cedar, burned scars and bolts like constellations. Her lips were split. There was a cut high on her cheekbone where the canopy had kissed back. When I touched her jaw, she flinched with 1,000 miles of discipline, and then went still, choosing to trust me, or running out of options. I didn't care which. I counted her pulse with the hand she hadn't released. "Stay with me," I whispered. "Habit. You say it to engines and kids and strangers in storms. You say it, and maybe the universe listens." Her mouth moved and nothing came out. I cracked a hydration ampule and let a bead find the corner of her lip. She swallowed like swallowing mattered. "Don't," she began, voice thin and formal, like a message routed through too many clearances. "Waste assets." "Good news," I said, tearing open the medkit I pretended I didn't own. "You're not an asset in my garage." The cut on her cheek wasn't bleeding right. Not red. Not blue. It was pearlescent almost, like spilled moonlight. When it hit my glove, it fizzed, tiny and soft, as if it recognized polymer and decided to argue. I blinked and rinsed it away with saline like you would with any bleed. Don't elevate the moment. Don't make it holy. Clean it. Close it. Keep going. She shivered when the water touched her, not from cold. More like from the idea of being tended to by someone who didn't ask for a card first. Her fingers tightened on me. "Thank you, Evan." There are sentences you expect to hear exactly once in your life. For me, it was my name said like that. New, simple, slid carefully into the world as if it could break. Her accent ran through it like a silver wire. Not from here. Not from any district I'd worked in. "You're welcome," I said, and hated how soft it sounded. Her gaze didn't let me escape. Gold. and beneath it something like a map. Exhaustion drew a circle around everything, but inside the circle she was awake. Alert in a way I recognized from the military once, the kind that measures escape routes by breath, not by yards. I pulled the lamp closer and swabbed her cuts. She winced when I hit something wired under the skin of her forearm. Not a chip, not any brand I'd seen. There were lines there, faint and iridescent, like the veins of a leaf when you hold it to the sun. They pulsed once, twice, synchronized to her heartbeat. "Don't touch that," she managed. "I already did." She glanced at the band on my wrist, at the red halo of corporate law. "You're a scrapper. That's what they call it." I taped a butterfly suture and pretended not to notice the way the little wound sealed itself before the tape set, skin knitting smooth with a tiny sound, like rain on foil. Discovery number 1, and the smallest one that morning. "Payment," she said. Less a question, more an algorithm. "You require—" "Nope." She frowned like I'd mispronounced gravity. "That is, inefficient." "Yeah." I folded a towel beneath her neck, took off my jacket, and tucked it over her shoulders. On her, it looked wrong, like clothing on a statue. "Breathe. The scrubbers in here are louder than they are strong, but they try." A silence settled that wasn't quite quiet. The garage made its noises. The old kettle whistled at no one. My drone on the shelf flashed a dead battery sulk. Out beyond the door, sand clicked against sand. The station broadcast weather in a loop, heat advisory, power rationing back to 30%. Knox's cruisers running a block on illegal lifts until noon. Life's wallpaper. A courier bike zipped past outside, its rider singing along with an AI that kept forgetting the second verse. Somewhere, a child begged a vending pillar to accept a bent hydration credit. Her eyes kept on me, evaluating, then softening, too slow to be conscious. "You broke protocol," she said. "What protocol?" "The seal. The canopy was—" She stopped. "Reset. You did it anyway. There wasn't time to ask permission." I tried a smile. It came out crooked. I don't listen well when machines are trying to keep a person. She watched my hands, not the joke. Hands counting pulse, cutting tape, skimming heat. People can argue with words. Hands tell the truth. Mine have been tired for years. Heavy. Honest. They lay tools down in lines. Fix what can be fixed. Carry what needs carrying. I let them. I let her see them do it. Her breathing evened. The gold in her gaze dimmed to amber, then brightened again when I shifted away. There it was, the little flare of panic hidden under discipline, not fear of pain, fear of solitude. "Hey," I touched her knuckles. "I'm not going anywhere." That shouldn't have mattered so much to a stranger. It did. Something in her posture unspooled, a knot loosened by a sentence that didn't ask for a signature. "I need—" She looked like each word was a door that required a code she'd forgotten. "A place, temporary, until Mesa 9 is mobile." "You're not moving that ship today," I said. She's sulking. I can hear it. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. Then she glanced toward the open crack of light under the garage door, and everything alert inside her sat up again. "Are you registered with Knox?" "Technically." "Then you are at risk." "Not my worst habit." I set the kettle on the induction plate. The plate's sticker still showed a logo from a company that died in the dust crash. I liked ghosts. They minded their business. "Tea?" She considered the steam rising from the spout like it had to prove itself. "I am." "Aria," she said finally, as if giving a real name in this place cost something. "Flight." She cut off the rank that wanted to follow. It hung unspoken between us, and the air seemed to choose my side. "Evan," I said, because we were keeping things simple. "Don't say anything you'll regret in front of a microphone." Her gaze flicked once to the ceiling where the mic would be if I paid my compliance fees. It wasn't there. I'd taken it down in May and traded it for bolts. She saw the empty screw holes, each one a confession, each one a promise. The tea tasted like dry grass. I touched the mug to her lower lip. She swallowed. Her fingers, still on my wrist, still measuring the cost and shape of me, did not let go. That quiet, stubborn contact did something ballistic in my chest. A click. Not the loud kind. The kind you feel in your bones. Gravity getting personal. I'd pulled plenty of pilots out of fire. Most of them I handed straight to rules. This one didn't feel like a pilot. She felt like a person who'd been taught to be a machine and was suddenly very tired of it. Outside, a cruiser's shadow moved over the garage like the hand of a giant clock. My band buzzed another warning. I ignored it. Aria's eyes tracked the shadow, then came back to me. She could have commanded. She could have promised me credits, clearance, a clean record. I watched her weigh those tools, the ones people like her used, and set them down like knives too heavy to carry just now. "Thank you, Evan," she said again. Quieter? Not a transaction. A surrender of something that had kept her upright for too long. "You're welcome," I said, and let the jacket settle closer around her shoulders, like a boundary I dared anyone to cross. I didn't see a bounty or a way out of debt. I saw a woman fighting not to be what she'd been programmed for. I saw how brave that fight looked up close. She didn't see a scrapper with a list of fines and a lonely kitchen. She saw someone who didn't ask for orders to care. The day kept sliding past outside. The fan whispered. The hull of Mesa 9 ticked as it cooled, complaining in a language neither of us needed to know. In my garage, the little universe we had made held steady. 2 breaths. 1 rhythm. "Stay with me," I said again before I knew I was speaking. Her fingers finally eased from my wrist, but not away. They settled over the back of my hand instead, a deliberate act that didn't belong to training or fear. "I will," she said. And that was the first true thing either of us had said all morning. By afternoon, the basin had gone white with heat. The garage took it and hummed, every wall a low instrument. Aria slept for an hour, then sat up like an alarm inside her had lifted its finger. No wobble, no theatrics. She reached for Mesa 9's flight jacket, realized she was wearing my old one instead, and paused, like recognizing comfort required a new procedure. "Don't stand yet," I said. "Your blood tried to argue with my gloves." "Your gloves lost," she murmured, still studying the frayed collar. "It is. Nicer than regulation." We walked the 20 meters to the wreck in broken shade, my shade cloths rigged from tarp, copper wire, and lies. The hull's temperature had dropped from furious to offended. Sand collected in silver drifts along the vents. Aria pressed her palm flat to the plating and exhaled, deep and controlled, as if talking to a stubborn animal. The metal answered. Not sound, exactly. More like a felt chord in the bones, the panel seams softened by a hair. Status LEDs along the spine flickered, then aligned into a slow breathing pattern. Hers. The second discovery hit me between the ribs. She wasn't just trained, she was tuned. Some resonance trick, some interface I'd never seen listed in any catalog. "Tell me what you hear," I said. She tilted her head. She's ashamed of failing in clear skies. She's also leaking plasma at segment Delta 6. Machines don't feel shame. "They do when they're watched," she said, and the corner of her mouth confessed a ghost of humor. I unrolled my kit, flexible panels, printed wrenches, a coil of bootleg filament that pretended it could be anything if you believed hard enough. Aria reached for my cracked tester, thumbed its scabbed screen, and didn't complain. She slid under the access lip in one smooth line of movement and spoke like a surgeon. Measurements, voltages, No wasted syllables. I fed her tools. She passed me bolts. The work burned the air down to bright essentials. Third discovery came when I asked for the starboard diagnostic log. She didn't open a bay. She touched her temple, blinked, and recited serial numbers like pages. Not reading. Remembering. You store the logs? I asked. While in command, I am the log. She hesitated, as if the rank had slipped out by reflex. Was, I echoed, and handed her a fiber patch the color of wet coal. When the plasma loop bucked, it was my fault. I had bridged a sensor with a bit of optimism. The bright snap was a fist from nowhere. I saw it arc toward her jaw, felt the old panic-dissolved decision. I moved before thought, shoulder and arm over her, turning us both into a shield that smelled like grease and sweat, and a jacket that didn't know which of us owned it anymore. The flash washed the inside of the panel with blue-white hunger. It kissed the back of my hand. Pain bit clean and hot. Arya didn't scream. She startled, then set her palm to my sternum like pushing me through a door, and looked up, our foreheads almost touching under the cramped lid. "You okay?" I asked, breath not quite even. "Now I am," she said, too soft to be formal. Her fingertips shifted. 3 taps, quick, deliberate. Not comfort. Code. I filed it in the new drawer labeled, "Things Arya does that are alarming and beautiful." Later, I'd learned the taps were a safety tell. Hull stable, pressure safe, hold still. For now, it just meant we didn't move until the coil went dark. I pulled my hand free and flexed. The skin had blistered in a ring. She caught my wrist again. Habit snuck back in and lifted it to the light. The ring eased, heat draining like a tide. She wasn't using a tool. She was the tool. Her pupils narrowed to slits of molten coin. The fizzing under my skin quieted, as if coached. "That's new," I said. "It is old," she answered. "We do not advertise." "No masks today," I said. "Deal?" Her gaze searched my face with a precision that should have left marks. The formal set of her mouth loosened. "Deal." We finished the patch with our shoulders touching. Not accident. Choice. The loop settled into a proper hum. Mesa 9 spine lights matched the pulse on the inside of my wrist. Somewhere overhead, Nox cruisers traced lazy polygons and called it order. As the heat leaned toward evening, the grid failed, as it did most days. The street pillars flicked from white to amber. My band threw a ration warning and went quiet. I kicked the garage ladder and climbed to the roof. Arya followed, less like climbing and more like measuring gravity and signing a brief waiver. The roof was a small republic. Cracked tar, 2 panels, 1 wind-battered flag that used to advertise a brand of noodles the algae farms had replaced. The basin ran out in every direction to where the mountains invented the horizon. Cargo kites drifted on tethers, like patient, colorful sharks. A delivery drone limped home with a missing rotor, swearing in 3 languages. I pulled a flask from the sun-warm toolbox and took a slow sip. The ethanol tasted like pears that had given up. I offered it over. Arya sniffed, narrowed her eyes at the scent of solvent and sugar, and tried. The cough surprised a laugh out of me. Small, unlicensed. "Do not record that," she said, scandalized and human. "Roof doesn't snitch." We sat with our backs to the vent. The vent sang. Somewhere below, the kettle clicked its lonely code. A breeze found the salt in my shirt and cooled it in bright patches. Ozone threaded the air around Araya, a promise of storm, with or without clouds. "You said you heard the ship," I ventured. "What do you hear up here?" She listened. The long look of it tugged something loose in me. "Your district," she said at last. "It sounds tired and kind in the wrong places." "That's accurate." "Also," she added, tone shifting so gently I almost missed it, "your jacket whistles through that ripped seam when the wind arrives from the west." "Show off," I said. But I checked the seam later and found the tiniest opening, perfect as a lie. We traded pieces of ourselves we could live with giving away. I told her about my boy sleeping 3 domes over with his mother and her new order. About the time I fixed a desal unit with a shoelace and a prayer. About the way the basin smells before a dust rain. She told me she had seen the skies of 100 worlds, flat green on Pel, glass purple on Suran, a night on Oxa, where the stars strobe with the heartbeat of a broken moon. And then she said, not looking at me, that this was the first time a chipped workbench had felt like home. That word landed harder than it should have. Home had been a mortgage once, then a room, then a toolbox you kept packed. I watched it try to be a person beside me, hair caught on a screwhead, eyes a color the basin didn't own. I haven't wanted to listen this much in years, I said, and it was so true it scared me. We let silence be company. The courier bike returned, music quieter now, riding in the slow lane of the evening. A flock of repair kites rose from the municipal yard, LED bellies blinking a code I didn't know. One broke formation and hovered above us, curious or confused. Arya looked up and tapped 3 times against the vent, the same code as under the panel. The kite steadied, corrected, and flew on. No masks, I thought. Chemistry that didn't need names. Knox's broadcast cut through the air with a flush of static. Clearance sweeps at dawn. Unauthorized craft to be impounded. Suspects subject to biometric contracts. I felt Arya go still beside me, still like a blade sheathed. You don't have to tell me, I said. I will, she answered, but not to them. The sun bled down the ridge. The basin turned to a bowl of iron. I handed her the flask again. She held it in both palms, like heat mattered. Our shoulders leaned, then didn't stop leaning. My hand found hers on purpose. Her thumb drew a precise arc over a scar on my middle finger I'd gotten from a jealous elevator. We stitched a small, quiet treaty there, skin to skin. No speeches, just breaths sinking. I can keep fixing Mesa 9, I said, but you'll have to teach me how to hear her. Arya considered. Then teach me how to hear this. She meant the garage, the district, me. Deal, I said. Below us, the fan kept time. Above us, the first satellite tag winked on and then off, pretending it hadn't seen anything worth reporting. The world didn't hold its breath for us. It didn't need to. We were learning how to breathe it together, without masks, without purchase orders, without the scripts that had kept us apart from ourselves. The pull wasn't an accident anymore. We looked at each other a heartbeat longer, on purpose. The storm came like a door slammed by a giant. 1 minute the basin wore its usual heat sheen. The next, the horizon lifted, turned inside out, and rolled toward us in a wall the color of burnt sugar. Knox's forecast bots called it Particulate Event Class 2. My bones called it Stay Indoors or Be Erased. I killed the garage door. The seal coughed and clanged shut. Outside, sand began to knife the siding. The power grid hiccuped. Our lights did that wounded fish flicker and went black. The fan spun down with a last loyal sigh. In the new hush, I could hear Mesa 9 ticking her disapproval in the bay. I thumbed the crank on the emergency lamp. It woke as an amber coin. The garage changed shape under its small sun. Tools found edges. Dust drifted like snow that had lost its confidence. Arya stood near the workbench in my jacket, hair static lit, the gold of her eyes taking on the lamp's burn until they looked like 2 small contained fires. This station, she said, listening to the wind on the ribs, sings under pressure. So do I said, busying my hands. Water filter, extra seals, the last of the ration bars with the cartoon seaweed smiling like it had never starved. The air thinned. Sandstorms teach you what you actually need. Heat. Water. Someone to hold the other end of the thought. I set a kettle on the induction plate, and the plate, dead to the grid, blinked apology. Arya touched her fingers to its rim. The tiny residual LEDs along the side woke, one by one, like someone remembering their name. I began. Borrowed, she said. I can coax residual charge. It is small. She glanced at me, gauging my reaction as if waiting for fear. I will not take from your panels. You can have all the leftover, I said. Me and the plate included. She studied that joke like a new tool, then let herself smile where it warmed the room. The kettle began to whisper again. The garage smelled like old cedar and rain that existed only in memory. We made a map on the bench. Chalk lines, printed sheets, the last clean corner of a packaging crate. If Nox ran sweeps at dawn, we said, we'd need Mesa 9 masked, her signature bleached. If the net expanded, we'd need a route through the canyon behind the Desal stacks. Arya sketched a path with the side of a broken stylus, wrist precise. I wrote freebies in the margins, my knowledge of the local habits, which street pillar always slept during storms, which patrol drone flew a hair low because some bored engineer had given it a soft spot for music. Wind bullied the walls. The amber lamp hummed with each crank. Our voices softened, as if the storm could hear us when we raised them. I noticed her hands most when they weren't doing anything. They settled near mine on the bench and stayed, as if idle could be a discipline. Her index finger brushed a smear of grease, and she dabbed it away with the cuff, faintly offended by chaos and also attracted to it. She reached for a bar. I slid it to her first. Our fingers touched. Once, by chance, then not by chance. She kept glancing at the crack under the door, where dust pushed its bright seam of intrusion. I stuffed a rolled mat there and set a toolbox on top. When I straightened, she was closer. "Can we just be here?" she asked, quietly enough that the question didn't feel like a request, so much as a hope set on the bench with the other tools. No titles. No war. "Yeah," I said. The easy yes surprised me with its gentleness. "We can do that." She was shaking, not from fear of the patrols, not from the storm, from the effort of removing armor you've worn so long it has your shape. I draped my jacket tighter. On her, it looked almost earthly, like a city kid's coat caught in a desert story. She watched my hands do the simple thing. Tuck, smooth, fix the collar, as if the tiny mercy were a language no one had spoken to her in years. I tucked a stray strand behind her ear. She went perfectly still, as if a motion sensor had been tripped somewhere sacred. My thumb grazed the warm skin at the hinge of her jaw and came away with a faint glow you couldn't see until you were close enough to count breath. Some interface in her didn't mind me anymore. Maybe it never had. The grid tried to wake and failed, a stutter of white and then more black. The lamp painted us in patient gold. The storm found a higher pitch, like it had remembered an insult. "We should rest," I said. "Morning's going to be loud." "Rest is a concept," she countered, but she sat on the low cot anyway, boots on the concrete, posture warrior straight until it wasn't. I set a thin blanket over her knees. She watched me like a continent watches a river carve a new line, not angry, just astonished. Silence resized us to an honest scale. I could hear the delicate clicks of some mechanism calming under her skin. She could hear my breathing turn from work to company. The lamp hummed. A bottle in the corner pinged as it remembered cooling. After a while, she spoke without lifting her head. Before, we purchased care. We codified it. A debt ledger for tenderness. Efficient. Clean. You could prepay for grief." I sat on the floor beside the cot, shoulder to her knee, close enough to be chosen or refused. "How'd that work out?" "We had a lot of records," she said. The smallest joke. Then, plain again, It wasn't care. She set her hand on mine. Not a test now. Not protocol. A placement. A saying. The warmth sharpened every outline in the room. The dust storm, the bent ladder, the line where the lamp's light failed and the dark resumed its job. Aria, I said, because the name itself felt like a door that opened onto safer air. She looked up. There were questions there I didn't deserve, and hope I couldn't survive breaking. I leaned in slow, because I have a son and a past, and a tool drawer filled with the memory of mistakes. Her breath met mine halfway. We hovered there, field balanced. When our lips touched, it was careful and absolutely certain. A kiss like a promise you write down in a margin and then keep. It didn't fix anything. It made everything truer. She exhaled into the kiss like letting go of the last handhold on a cliff you never wanted to climb in the first place. I cupped her cheek. The faint iridescence under her skin brightened, then folded away. Her spine eased into the cot. When we parted, the garage felt larger, or maybe we finally fit inside it. I'm here, I said, because I had no speeches and no credentials, only this. She nodded, didn't release my hand. And I, she said, am choosing to be. We slept in turns that weren't turns, more like drifts. She dozed with her head against my shoulder, waking when the storm found a new rhythm, asleep again when my breath kept the old one. I dreamed of my boy measuring the world with a toy compass, grinning when the needle found us. Somewhere near morning, the wind tired. The garage ribs creaked like an old ship easing into dock. Dawn happened behind the dust, pale and tentative. The lamp died politely. Job done. Outside, the world had been sanded to the quick. I brewed water that tasted like metal and hope. Aria stood by the door, hair to her shoulder now and full of electricity. She touched the seal, then the jacket, then my face with the same precise kindness, like checking 3 systems before takeoff. By morning, she said, almost wondering, we. Not by speeches, I answered, by how easy it is to breathe the same air. She reached for my toolbox and handed me the driver I always forget I need. We didn't talk about it. We didn't have to. We had a ship to convince and a net to outrun. But the storm had done its secret work. It had sanded protocol down to skin, and under that, to something that didn't belong to ranks or contracts. The bands began to ping with fresh orders. Knox's cruisers cut the sky, punctual and hungry. The world stretched, ready to snap. Aria looked at the door, then at me. There was no mask left to lift. Whatever comes, she said. We meet it as this. Yeah, I said, and picked up the stabilizer brace in one hand and her fingers in the other. Outside, the basin breathed out. Inside, we were already breathing together. Dawn arrived wearing sirens. The basin came back into focus, grain by grain, and with it came Knox. Cruisers carving blue geometry across the sky. Drones dragging sensor drapes low enough to comb the hair off a lizard. My band throbbed red. Clearance sweep at 09. Unauthorized craft to be impounded. Biometric contracts to be executed. The voice that read it out smiled as it promised cages. Aria stood by the door, spine straight, hands open. The jacket had learned her shape. Her eyes were gold and awake. She didn't hide. There is something you need to know, she said, and the formality in her voice made the garage feel like a courtroom. Tell me. I was system commander on the Lumen path. I enforced protocols that calculated which lives were cost-effective. A breath, and with it a tremor no wind could claim. I am not in uniform now because I rejected a directive. My curator, my mother in our terms, ordered the removal of a child on Oxa to settle an agreement. I refused, Evan. I brought the child home. I was called unfit. I was scheduled for recall and reformat. I stared at the door as if it could help, It had 2 dents and a sticker that said, "No credit. No problem." And Mesa 9? An exile ferry. It malfunctioned by design. Her mouth twitched without humor. The malfunction helped me fall out of their hands. I am hunted by mine. By hers. Through the thin wall, Knox's cruisers curved again. Lazy buzzards that brought spreadsheets to a knife fight. A new ping hit my band. Not public. Private. I shouldn't have seen it. The glyphs were wrong, curved and bright, fluid like ink in low gravity. Arya leaned over without touching the device. Her eyes narrowed. "She found you," she whispered. "She repurposed Knox's contracts to mine the district for me." The message unfolded into a smiling clause. Anyone seen in proximity to a Mesa 9 signature would be bound to a 30-year labor agreement, retroactive to sunrise. A little footnote blinked. Minors of registered violators, included for care continuity. My throat closed like a fist. "My kid." Arya closed her hand around mine, firm enough to anchor. "This is coercion. I'm sorry. My leaving hurt you already. It's not your fault." But I felt the old anger blink on anyway, a pilot light catching. The district had 1,000 ways to take from you. This one had a new accent. Outside, a cruiser passed close enough to rattle the bolts. Its belly scanner hummed. On the bench, our chalk map looked suddenly like a prayer written on a receipt. "We can go," I said. The words surprised me with how easy they came. Not because I'm scared for me, because I don't want to lose you. Or him. I nodded toward the domes where my boy still dreamed inside ordered air. "We outrun this, then we figure out how to pull him out clean." "There is a net," she said. "Knox will raise a gravity weave from ridge to stacks. Nothing small leaves without a permit." "I did maintenance on digsats once," I said, already moving. "Their weave nodes hum a semitone flat. I can feel it through my teeth. This is what choices look like in my life. Tools into a crate, crate into a hatch. A note scrawled and left on the workbench for a boy who'd read it when the day permitted. Back soon. Bringing weather." Arya moved like the room was a ship rolling, and she refused to spill. She crossed to Mesa 9, brushed her palm along her wounded spine. The lights answered her with loyal breath. She paused, listening. "My curator is on the line," she said, and for a heartbeat, the air went cold. She pressed 2 fingers to her temple and to the hull at once, as if holding 2 skulls in the same hands. I heard nothing. Her face told me everything. "Arya," a voice said, not through speakers, but through the thin hairs along my arms. It wore no static, only certainty. "You will return. Your failures will be repaired. Our reputation requires it." "Mother," Arya replied, and the word bent like old metal. "Release the contracts. Compliance precedes compassion. What you call compassion is priced." Arya's eyes flicked to me. "We are done with prices. Bring the pilot to the desert," the voice said sweetly. "We will take the child first. It will teach him not to resist adult decisions." Something inside me took off its jacket and rolled its sleeves. I didn't raise my voice. I walked to the hatch, threw the crate into the single-seater's gut, and grabbed the manual stabilizer that only I and people older than me still trusted. Then I held out my hand. "With me?" My voice was steady. It felt like walking into a storm after years of sitting in a house that pretended the roof was enough. Arya looked at my hand like it was a strange weapon, then a tool, then a home. "With you," she said, and the calm in her tone made the sirens outside feel like gossip. We moved. Mesa 9 accepted us into her mouth with a relieved groan. The cockpit smelled like hot metal and rain that had considered us and moved on. Arya took the forward chair, and the ship altered around her body, panels curving into new obedience. I took the second seat, and hooked the stabilizer to my shoulder harness, hand closing over the lever I'd only ever pulled in stories you tell yourself when no one is listening. Nox's drones stitched the air with blue thread. Our garage door had no time for ceremony. It screamed and flexed as Mesa 9 shoved herself under and out, shedding a rib of paint like a snake leaving a bad skin. Sand exploded around us, torn up by our reluctant thrust. "Gravity weave in 20 seconds, Arya said. "They are early." "Of course they are," I muttered, feeling for the hum. It came like an ache in the back teeth, a crowd of quiet voices a little out of tune. "Left canyon. The decile stacks will mess their phase if we stay low." Arya flew. No drama, no wasted motion. The ship had sulked under my hands. Under hers, she flared. We skimmed the broken spine of the old highway, slid into the trench where the desal's pipes ticked and sweated. Drones craned to follow, nets trailing like jellyfish bellies. The first node winked alive ahead. The air thickened. The horizon bowed. My stomach rose in a lazy elevator that forgot a floor. "Brace," I said. Not a warning, a wish. I pulled the stabilizer. It resisted like a bad decision. The manual fin on our right wing bit into the heavy air and sang, ugly and useful. Mesa 9 shuddered but held the line. The weave tried to find the harmonics of our bones. I gave it a wrong note. "Second node," Arya said. Sweat drew a perfect line down her temple and vanished into her jaw, where it kissed something bright and was forgiven. 3. 2. The canyon kinked. Ahead, a service arch yawned, low and mean. The drones couldn't match our angle without scrubbing their bellies. Good. The weave surged. Bad. My teeth sang too loud. I tasted pennies and remembered a school nurse pressing gauze to a split lip while the district taught my boy the pledge in a new meter. We hit the arch with a prayer's width to spare. The weave net blared, confused. Arya flicked her wrists, and Mesa 9 slid a meter sideways without asking the air. The left strut kissed rock. The ship hissed something offended, in a language that sounded like corded strings. I whispered sorry to her skin and tightened my hand on the lever. "Third node is adaptive," Arya warned. "They have learned you." "They always do." I smiled without warmth. "Let them learn this." I killed the stabilizer altogether. The ship dropped, then hung, then rode the sudden slack like a thief rides a crowd. For one carved breath, we were perfectly out of phase with their weave. Arya punched the burners in a lazy arc that pretended to bore us. The cruisers above hesitated, having predicted a different animal. Mesa 9 slid under the last line like a girl slipping out from under a too-heavy hand. We were through. The basin unfurled, open and ordinary, which is to say, lethal in 1,000 manageable ways. Behind us, Nox's drones made a group decision to be mad later. Ahead, the air opened into pale travel. Arya did not celebrate. She exhaled like letting go hurt, and felt good at once. They will adapt again. Then so will we. I swallowed. We get to the North Ridge, call a favor at the rail yard, and ride a freight ghost to the domes. We lift my kid on a maintenance pretext and go. "You would steal your son," she said carefully. "I would rescue him." I caught her glance. "You did the same for a kid you didn't know." She held that and nodded once. The ship leveled. The cruisers kept their distance like polite wolves. Her mother's voice returned, distant now, thin with range. "You make an error, Arya. You mistake impulse for choice. You mistake softness for safety. You mistake him for a person," Arya said, and cut the channel. Her hands shook, barely. She placed one on my knee, steadying both of us. We climbed toward the pale tail of morning. Mesa 9's wounds complained, then settled into the manageable sort of pain. Nox fell away behind us, still present, less inevitable. I looked at Arya, profile lit by a small, stubborn sun. Stillness and humanity sat beside each other in her face, negotiating. She had been trained to purchase care. She was learning to give it without price. I had been trained to keep my head down, make myself small, be grateful for breath. I was learning to choose. Under fire, she flew. I held the stabilizer, and her hand. We punched the ridge and jumped, the basin shrinking to a page below. Sand, the garage, every should I'd been taught. Tabled. The danger wasn't gone, but now it was shared. Whatever they throw, I said, we throw us. Arya's smile was a weapon and a prayer. Then let them learn what that means.